Kimberly Crail is a wise woman, herbalist, and educator who came from Wall Street to the weeds. Casey's mission is to teach folks how to heal themselves using whole plants and foods as medicine. You can heal yourself with simple and inexpensive methods, foods, and herbs. And now, here's the host of Weeds of Wisdom, Kimberly Crail.
Hi, welcome to Weeds of Wisdom. This is Kimberly Crail, also known as Casey the Wise Woman, and today is Tuesday, March 10th. And we just celebrated International Women's Day on Sunday, which is always a happy holiday for me. And I am really thrilled at my guest tonight. It's a woman that I have followed for many, many years. Her name's Dashu, and she is a really extraordinary historian, researcher, and writer. And I can't wait to talk to her about wise women in history. So without further ado, welcome, Max. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So so this is your first time on Weeds of Wisdom, and we welcome you. And I wanted to just take just a minute or two. And I mean, you founded the Suppressed Histories Archives in 1970. So maybe, tell us a little bit tell us the story of how you got there and what that was all about.
I had just left college. Women's studies didn't exist yet. Women's history was a joke. And I began researching independently. And so I was just scouring libraries. And then in 1973, I fell into using images to teach, because I had already begun to unearth things from ancient history primarily, but also some modern photos. Basically, where are women in the world? What happened? How did patriarchy develop? I was looking for matriarchal societies, and then I found the ancient female figurines. And so a lot of the lines of research I've followed for the last 56 years are along those topics. But teaching with images is really important for me, because it's not just talk. It's not just things from the written record. We can look more fully at the entire cultural record of the world and get more of a truth about women than what we've been hearing, which is a very male-dominated narrative about history.
Right.
And so I began archiving. I didn't set out to start an archive, but I wound up creating one. And by the time I stopped taking slides, the technology sunsetted, I had about 15,000 slides. Wow. And I have been increasingly going over into digital images and using the net as well as a source. And so according to the web pages that I migrated over some material. I had to do some processes. According to that, I have 81,000 images.
Wow.
And that's just the digital, though. I mean, what I have in the hard copy form in my file cabinets is imponderable, how many. And so that's what I do. I teach global women's history on all kinds of angles of view.
Neat. Wow. That's really fascinating. And what were you doing at the time back in 1970, like for money? I'm just curious.
Yeah, good question. Well, I just left college. I was very close to being homeless. I had very little money. I worked at a burger cottage for a little while, and I was just hustling this way or that and the other, jobs that would allow me to do what I really wanted to do.
That's great.
And so that was, that was my real work, but I didn't get paid, and I usually don't for my real work.
The work that's of your heart, from the heart. Yeah. It's funny. I apprenticed with Susan Weed, and she was in a similar situation when she started teaching, 50 odd years ago. And that's something that I've also, as an herbalist, that I've struggled with, because it's, really herbal medicine is inexpensive or free. And so, and it's abundant, it's all around us. So it's there's no incentive to make money, right? I don't want to bring people back, this sort of, model that we have today in terms of medicine. that's just not my style. I want to teach you how to fish. But no, so that's really interesting. And I think also in my understanding, images actually are much more ancient than words and language.
Well, words are ancient, but we don't have a record of them.
Right, because we didn't have an alphabet.
Right. So with the alphabet or other kinds of writing, like, you have hieroglyphs and you have different kinds of syllabaries and, script like Chinese or something like that. But yeah, that's only, we can't go back more than the very, very most generous estimate, years BCE.
Is how, I'm sorry, say again?
But like we'll say
how far back?
500 BCE is about the oldest we could say that any script could be actually found,
Right,
I mean,
right.
There are some that might argue with that and say that the script of old Europe is older than that, but it's not a lot more than that. So what I look at is like, really, this has to be an interdisciplinary thing. Women's history is not found in the same areas of the library as men's history. So we have to look at archaeology, we have to look at rock art, and then there's linguistics. All these fields of study shed light, because with linguistics you start to learn, well, this society is patriarchal because they have words for daughter-in-law more than son-in-law. These kinds of patterns you can see patrilineage showing up. Right. Or war chiefs, things like that in the vocabulary. And now we have genome studies. So that's also telling us deep history about who's related to who and who moved around to where, and so there's a lot of angles of view. But ancient sculpture, the female figurines were one of my starting points, because if you look at the Neolithic, very old, cultural record, women are central in the representations of humans. In clay, before that, stone, bone, ivory. And so that meant something, the fact that there was this strong representation of women. And, that's been an argument for the last half century, because the archaeologists didn't really want to say that meant anything, and so, in the 60s, they were saying, well, they're sex idols, they're fertility idols, they're ancient porn, they're toys. They had all these theories that really did not take in the sacral quality of these ancient female icons. And so that's been an ongoing battle to really get that recognized. And as time goes on, I mean, early on, we thought of them in terms of goddesses, and I see goddess as a spectrum. And so I don't negate that, but I think that, with analogous indigenous societies, often they are representations of ancestral mothers or grandmothers. Right?
Yes.
So that's part of the spectrum, all the way up to Creatrix and the great mother of all.
I've always considered the goddesses to be archetypes rather than literal figures, goddesses and gods, frankly. At least, that seems to be the way it feels to me, that this is an archetype rather than a literal historical human or something.
There's a lot of ways of looking at it, really. And, and I think that the goddess movement itself, you have atheists. That humans are mythic beings, and so symbols and characters and images, representations, stories really affect us. When you're going in ancient Greece and there's all these hero stories and they're all rapists. This is a reflection of the society, but it's also a molder of social values. And so from a feminist standpoint, we wanted to overturn the male dominance iconography and find something that was affirmative of women's power and, what women offer and what women can be. And so there was a very strong impulse to recover those stories and those images.
Yes, understood. Well, I've also read, I don't know if you've read, you probably have, The Alphabet versus the Goddess by Leonard Shlain. And it's quite a fascinating read because it really speaks to how we use our brains with writing and that sort of thing, as opposed to imagery. And so
it's the whole bicameral brain thing,
Right, exactly. So just for the listeners, the right hemisphere of the brain is typically the one responsible for creativity, art, dreaming, intuition, that sort of thing. And the left brain is your logical, linear brain, which as soon as writing was invented, we were really pitched over very much into the left hemisphere. And the right hemisphere became known as the feminine side of the brain. And for some reason, anything associated with the feminine and nature and intuition was, sort of less valued. And, history is always written by the victors, as they say. So, from their perspective. So, without judgment, but it's really fascinating for me just to have an observation about how we actually originated and to think about other ways of organizing ourselves. And I've worked a lot with the Native American cultures, which are, I would say, matrilocal, in that the husband moves into the wife's mother's longhouse, and so in that way, the wife has support of her female relatives, and everybody's kind of there to support the raising of the children. And then when if she decides she doesn't want him anymore, she just puts his things outside. So, and then there's a chief that runs the men, but he actually is ruled by sort of this council of grandmothers, which, is responsible for the whole tribe. So, it's a very jarring kind of thing for us to think about in our current society. That wow, that's really an interesting way of thinking about, organizing and working and so
Well,
on.
it's
So,
inspirational. I wouldn't say it's jarring. I would say that, it does certainly contradicts the patriarchy that we all exist in, but it's a model of really too of balance of powers. It's centered around women. It's centered around the life givers. And as you say, they have social motherhood. It's not just the nuclear family mom struggling to hold the whole thing up without much of a hand from her husband, if she even still has one, so that matters a great deal,
Yes.
in very practical terms.
Right. Understood. And, and from a, sort of a health standpoint or a physiology standpoint, it's fascinating to me when I found out that we actually, all the babies are originally XX chromosomes in the womb. And they're basically, the female is the basis. And then after, I think it's in week 4 or so, the one X chromosome may or may not break off and become a Y based on the sperm. Yes,
we
yes.
better not go into this discussion because I disagree with this.
Oh, okay. Well,
they have XY, but the thing is about the activation of the hormones, and the way that. Let's not go there.
Okay, we won't go there. So the history of why do you think that it's been suppressed? What do you think is going on there?
It's a power move. Domination will tolerate no alternative narratives. If you can convince women that they are hopelessly fated to male domination, that it is from the beginning of time, that it's biology, that it's what God ordained, and therefore you must obey, then you can get a lot more compliance than you can by brute force, which was also employed. The way I look at patriarchy, and I'm doing a lot of work now on the historical process of patriarchalization. It's not one event. It's layer upon layer upon layer, right? And so early on, you have this conquest model, and it can just take the form even before states of males raiding and capturing women, the whole marriage by capture form, right? And that's just brute force. Later on, you have armies and states, and you have organized trafficking of female captives, female slavery. You have development of models of marriage that allow males to control the women sexually, but also to control their procreative power. Who, is it going to be a matrilineage like the Haudenosaunee that you were talking about? Or in order to ensure paternity, there's a lot of control that's necessary to instigate, because there's an African American saying, mama's baby, papa's maybe. How do you know for sure who is the father? If you're going to base the social system on the father line, then this impulse to control women arises. And
Right.
so you have the sexual double standard. You have punishments for female sexual expression that's not controlled by men, and a whole array of types of controls. Then at another layer, you have the use of religion, also religious law in particular,
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, structure marriage in certain ways. And so you've got rules around female chastity, stoning women, for fornication, all of these kinds of things. And, who the baby belongs to and what happens to widows and all of these things. So it's layer upon layer. But what happens in that last phase is that you have what I call internal colonization of women's minds, because they're still being forced to a greater or lesser degree to comply with patriarchy externally. But the internal controls in evangelical families, in a Catholic family, in a Muslim family, we go on listing patriarchal religions, the woman is made to believe that God has ordained that she be compliant to all these rules.
Mm-hmm. No,
So she may be
yeah.
told, he can have extra wives, but you can't have any other husbands. All of the inequalities.
Right. Right. Yes. I mean, I think that's a key point that, the whole issue of body autonomy and, is something that I don't think is really well understood by a lot of men because it doesn't impact them. And in my experience, people only talk about they talk from their own experience. So it makes complete sense to me that men wouldn't be able to see this because it
Well,
doesn't
but
impact them.
it does impact them. That then you've got the incels.
Oh, well, that's true.
Men very much want
Right.
men want to be able to control women because they want access to sex, and most of them eventually want children. They gain benefits, and not to mention the domestic labor that they get
Mm,
by partnering with women. So, if those things are removed, they get very angry. And
mm,
that's why it's so hard for battered women to leave.
right.
Is they have been conditioned, as women have been conditioned one way, men have been conditioned another way, which is to expect to be the dominant partner, to have services from women, and also to it's just the whole level of entitlement. So there's definitely losses to them, but I think the whole thing is maladaptive, because although they do get those benefits, it degrades the entire society. You
Mm,
know, you're getting violence, you're getting accumulation of property and class systems and wars and all. Look at the situation we're here in the United States right now with this massive military step up. They've taken away whole groups of social services that are
I'm more
necessary.
concerned about
The war.
yeah, I'm more concerned about the fact that, nobody seems to care about anybody and everybody that's in the Epstein files and involved in sex trafficking and doing all of these horrible things on behalf of the US government and governments all around the world. And nobody's talking about that. They just
Well, they're
want
trying to distract from it. That's what this war is.
yeah, maybe
They're
that
trying
could be. I
desperately
mean,
to, because a lot of people do care, but they don't want it. They're trying to push it off the TV screens.
yeah. But, to me, I don't think it's going away. And there are a lot of people
No.
that are in there digging through the millions of pages that have been released. And to your point about how we've been trained, the men have been trained and the women have been trained. I've become friends with a woman named Kathy O'Brien, who was actually an MK Ultra mind control slave. And so she explains how, this is what the Nazi research showed was that in 3 generations, any attitude, belief, or behavior becomes what's called autogenic. So it's just automatic. Everybody does this. This is normal, right? So to your point, we've been many, many generations now of being trained into a particular system, which I call the power over. I'm not crazy about patriarchy and all that matriarchy because it's like somebody dominating something. I really like the power over versus the power with model because, the patriarchy, what we've called patriarchy, is really a power over women model. And I think matriarchy at its essence is power with. It's
Right.
not
They are
excluded.
not the same paradigm. I completely agree with that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this has been the argument around the naming,
yeah,
because the naming suggests parallel systems with a
right.
switch on who's the dominant.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And that's so
that's
like,
why a lot of feminists, I was using matrix societies for a while to refer to the web of life.
mm-hmm,
And then I came across matricultural, and now there's matriversal. There's a lot of different namings, but there were also women who said, we're going to redefine matriarchy because that's the word that is familiar to people.
right.
But the point is, you have to, even if whatever word you use, you still have to explain to people that it's not the same paradigm at all. And power over and power with encapsulates that very well.
Yes, I mean, to me, and just like I don't like calling the left brain the male brain and the right brain the
Right.
female brain. It's like,
Right.
okay, this is like a linear thing, and this is a holographic thing.
Right.
It's like,
We all have both.
and we all have both. Exactly right. Exactly right. All right, perfect. So, thanks for that. I appreciate our discussion on that. And there's no doubt, and it happens in. I think the issue is that when information is a threat to any particular system, then it becomes suppressed. I mean, herbal
That's it. And
medicine.
that goes to the question you asked me at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. That's exactly why.
Right, because it's a threat to the structure that supports this power over dynamic. And it's very similar in herbal medicine. So I had a guest on, and we were talking about how in Rockefeller, completely, got rid of all of the herbalists and the midwives and the naturopaths in order to give us, petroleum-based pharmaceutical medicines. And I said, well, that's not the first time that we've been wiped out. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, what do you think the witch burnings were all about? I mean,
Well, it was
most
part
of
of
the
it.
women, were healers and, herbalists or midwives, right? Working with people. And that's a real threat when you're bringing in an industry or an institution like the church that wants you to follow its particular rules and its business model, right?
And it's monopoly on that, because this
Yes.
is really what the medical doctors did, is they established a monopoly outlawing the female healers in Europe. And we could even extend that internationally, because a lot of states like China, for example, persecuted what were called the Wu. It's their word, translating as witch is problematic because it's a European word, but the female shamans, you could call it, the medicine women, the
Mhm.
priestesses. And the males also that were practicing those ecstatic ways were heavily persecuted at certain periods in Chinese history, because again, it's a threat to the power.
Right.
So the ecstatic is that right brain, if you want to assign it that way. The ecstatic cannot be controlled. When people are channeling divine energy, it's not going to come out the way the dominators want it to, and so they try to crush it.
Ah, yes. Yes. They have to stop that flow
Yeah.
that's sacred and natural and beautiful and abundant and uplifting.
Yeah,
That,
and direct access to it, because this was
Mhm.
a real threat, for example, to the all male priesthood in
Right.
Christianity, and
Right.
others as well. But is you were supposed to go through the priest. But if there was a seeress in your neighborhood, or healer, an herbalist, whatever it was, and she was, operating in a different paradigm, they really tried mightily to stamp that out, and,
Right.
to declare them witches, heretics, make laws against them, because that was a competition. The witch as ceremonialist was a competition, or the midwife who,
Mm-hmm.
bathing the child in water from a south running spring at birth before it ever got to the priest for the baptism. This was deeply threatening to them, because they were supposed to be it,
Right.
and they were not, and they hated it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's, it's so important to understand things that are threat to a system or a model are often suppressed. And so because the victor or the person at the top of the heap is the one writing the history, are often excluded from the history. Like we have the excluded books of the Bible, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and some of the others, and the whole concept of female as divine is very threatening to many people.
It's blasphemy.
It's blasphemy.
It's
Yeah,
heresy.
exactly. So we actually have to take a real quick commercial break here, Max. So we're going to be right back here in just about a minute. And so we'll be right back with Max Dashu. Thanks so much, everybody.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com.
Well, if people want to learn more, because we have a lot of information, they can also see the study results and go through a lot of stuff. Or if they want to purchase, you guys are going to have to provide a link. Yeah. Now, there's no membership fees. There's no obligation. This is not an MLM. This is not you got recurring fees, or there's no catch, okay? People are going to sign up, give up their name and their email, and make their password. They accept the terms and conditions, and they go right through. And that's the way it works. So you don't have to buy every month or none of that kind of stuff.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Weeds of Wisdom. I'm here with Max Dashu. And for the masterpiece, the code that you want to use is Weeds of Wisdom, and that'll give you 10% off if you decide to buy something, but you don't have to. That link is just for your benefit, and it's included down below in the show notes for you, too, if you want that. And so we're back with Max Dashu, founder of the Suppressed Histories Archives, and a woman that I've been following for a very long time. Really knows her stuff about history and the power of imagery. And you know, did you have some things that you wanted to share in terms of?
I would like to do a screen share. Let me just get that going if I can remember how to do it here. Oh, you got it. Okay.
I've got you going. Yeah.
All right. I have to go to full screen though. Here, hold it 1 second.
Oh, I got it. You got it.
Play from current slide. That should make it better. Okay.
Excellent. Oh, that's perfect. Yes.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about, because you were interested in talking about wise women, is I thought I would look at some examples out of European histories. And one of them, this is an Icelandic tradition. It's an old poem called the Vulvaspá, which means the seeress's prophecy. And here is the vulva, which is the prophetess, engaged in something they called utiseta. And it means sitting out sitting. And what it is she goes out into nature. She sits on a rock. She sits in the forest. There's a waterfall in the background. And she sees. She knows. She has prophetic knowledge. She may gain the power for healing. And in the story, in the poem, Odin comes and he wants to gain knowledge from the prophetess. And so he's bringing all this treasure. He's got golden rings and he's going to pay her. And she mocks him a little bit, saying, well, Odin, didn't you cast your eye into the well of Mimir in order to gain knowledge? Why then come to me? But, it's just a sign of the incredible esteem for the knowledge that these women had in the Norse cultures. And so in the Vulvaspá, she says, the fates I fathom, yet farther I see far and wide the world's about. So she's a journeyer in the spirit. And so this was a thing, this seeking of knowledge through nature. This is not anything controlled by external theologies or churchly structures. It's something very much direct contact with the divine. And a little bit later, there's a Norse writing that they define utiseta. This is a Christian monk writing. And he says it's sitting out at night for the sake of evoking spirits or for the sake of gaining knowledge. So we have actually little shreds of this. There's another piece, and we just have this word in Old High German, Priodarsaza, hearing sitting. And so it's that sitting in silence in the forest next to the river, and it's a kind of a meditation in nature. that brings in deep knowing. So we have references in, again, back with the Norse, it's time to chant in the sage's chair. And that could be a stone throne like this one we're seeing. At the well of Urd, we see here, the eldest of the Norns, I saw and said naught. I saw and took thought. So there are these deep meditations in nature. And the Roman Tacitus is writing about the Germans, and he says the men believe that women have something holy and prophetic, a power, that he neither spurns their advice nor neglects their oracular sayings. And we're looking at a modern engraving of the Voleda, the prophetess of the Germans in northern Germany, sitting near the Lippe River on a high stone tower. And she was actually the leader of a rebellion against the Roman Empire. So we have these outdoor stone seats, and there's a variety of these. We're looking at Bridget's chair on a sacred lake in Ireland, and then the Hag's chair, you may have heard of this one, at Loch Crew. This is a site associated with the Cailleach, who was the builder that created these megalithic monuments.
Wow.
And so in Ireland, one of the legendary places for seeking wisdom was the well of Sagash, which is the source of the Boyne River, also itself named after a goddess named Boan. And so the purple hazelnuts of wisdom would ripen there and were eaten by the salmon, and then purple spots would come up on the bodies of the salmon, showing that this divine energy was in them. And anyone who ate these, the salmon or the hazelnuts, would gain wisdom if they arrived at the proper time. So this takes us into like the whole aspect of knowing. How does divine or spiritual knowing come about in the Irish mind? And so the Druid or the Fili, the Druids, as we would say, had three spiritual arts to attain this wisdom. And Imas Forosnoi, the great wisdom that illuminates, this is very mysterious. We don't know a lot about it, it's just referred to. Then there's Tainam Lauda, the chewing or breaking of pith, and this was somehow connected with divination and with sacrifices to the goddesses and gods. And Dichatal Docheneb, chanting from the bones. And so I take this to mean from the core of your being, this incantation. So there's a whole group of names around incantation in European witch tradition. And this is from my book, Witches and Pagans, Women in European Folk Religion. So in Norse, they call the woman who chants Galdrakona. Very close to that in Old English, Galstra. And also Wurtgelster, you'll like this one, Casey, the woman who chants over herbs.
I like that one.
Potentizing of herbs or the invocation of herbs. And then there's also the Laudruna, the mystery singer. And then the songs themselves in Old Norse are referred to as Seidlati, the songs of the trance ceremony, or Vardlokur. The word for one of the shamanic words in Finnish is Loitsia, for the chanter, or in Sami, related language, Guaps, woman who chants. So there's all these different names. You can see various forms of them in Finnish, which I've somehow managed to repeat twice in this screen for some reason. And then in Latin, there's this whole other group. So incantatrix or praecantatrix in Latin becomes enchantresse in French, and that's where we get enchantress. I like this word a lot, and you're going to love this, Casey, because libestre is the closest thing that Anglo-Saxon had to medicine woman. That's the best translation I can come up with it. Lib means life force, so this is the vital essence. And so libcraft is to work with vital forces, very much like witchcraft, but very specifically dealing with this life energies. Libison, amulet, but libestre is a woman who works with the lib. It's name for this medicine. I mean, medicine woman is the best way. When you think about medicine in the Native American context, and they say medicine not just for the herb, but you know, any kind of spiritual quality, libestre.
Yes.
And there's also a old High German.
I teach the 7 medicines, and only one of them really involves herbs. The rest are mind medicine and energy medicine and serenity medicine.
Ritual bathing and all kinds of things like that. Smoking people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then anyway, there's words for herb women I don't have them all listed here. There's a bunch of them in Eastern European languages, but also words for midwives, which mean both in Germanic and in uh, Romance languages, with the woman or with the mother.
Interesting.
So coming back to Seder, this is something important because just to try and understand the nature of this ceremony, this is a very hard word to translate into English because it encompasses ceremony, magic. Trance is an element of it, especially the prophetic seers entering into trance with those Seidlati, those enchanting songs. She goes into ecstasy from this. But they think the ultimate etymology of this word is something having to do with to tie or bind, to connect in some way.
Mm.
And so we have this title Heath, which is related to the word heathen, but this is the Old Norse form. And they're talking about a woman, a legendary woman, who was doing what the Vuller were doing in the actual society. They're going from household to household, and she's doing prophecy as a seeress. They're putting her up on the high seat, and she's going into her trance, and then she begins to prophesy. But this is written down by Christian monks, and so when she makes the Save trance, they end up with this editorial comment: she was ever the joy of evil women. So there again is that heretical,
Judgment.
harmful magic, all of this kind of things projected onto it.
Mm.
And so another name for the wise woman was Seidkona, a woman who makes the Seid. And she's dancing on the high seat, the Seidhjalar, the seat of trance. Let's see. We could go into the Vuller. This is a ritual staff. So the witch's wand is something that comes out very strongly in the Scandinavian culture, and they've actually found examples of these. This is from the Isle of Man. And it's got a woman with a bird mask and a bird wing. That's what her robe looks like, holding one of these staves. And so Efla Seith, fixing a ceremony, or we could say trance, some kind of charged event. She's shown, this is a obviously modern picture, but you can see how intently people are listening to her as she prophesies, holding this
Staff.
this ceremonial staff. It's called a Seidstaffer. So here is the actual staff
Wow.
that stood 1,000 years in the ice, and here is a reconstruction of it. And so when I first saw this, what is this spokes coming out of the staff here? Because I kept seeing these, and it's like, what are they? And I finally figured out, thanks to a Norwegian archaeologist, these are distaffs, which are the spinning wands that women use in drawing down the wool or the flax, whatever they're spinning. And it's wrapped around these spokes, helps hold them on the staff. So the witch's wand was very closely associated, and I have a whole chapter on this in Witches and Pagans, with spinning in these cultures. And so there are all these strong, and these are not Seidstaffer, these are actual spinning distaffs from modern Europe. And so we have many of these different wands from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland that were found in almost entirely in female burials. And so they're really, really important. So you hear these are drawings of women who are buried with the Seidstaffer. And so also other amulets with them. And this is a reconstruction showing, this is interesting for you also, is because there was a pouch amongst her various amulets and her ritual tools, including this, like probably representing the Seithjal, the ritual throne. There was a bag of henbane seeds. So, some of the herbal stuff coming through there. And one of these women in Norway was buried astride her Seidstaffer. So she, like the broomstick.
Yes, I'm thinking that.
We go across Northern Asia, like the staffs that the shamans rode. They had horse-headed staves in some of the cultures that they would ride upon ceremonially to symbolize their otherworld journey.
Fascinating.
So we could go on, and I'm going to just, let's see, I'm going to actually, how do I exit here? Can I exit? Yeah. I just want to show you before we finish with this part that, let's go back to, this is the book that you can get from Valletta Press, and it's VELEDA.net. This is my source book on European ancestral tradition in this time period, in the Middle Ages.
Wow.
Every source that I could reconstruct with a lot of this information I've been telling you about, you can get it in this book. In translation, because most of this is not in English. And this is my newer book, Women in Greek Mythography, and there's a lot in there. The Pythias and the Melissae are explicitly female prophets. The Oracle of Delphi was called the Pythia and also called the Melissa. And so there's a lot of information about female prophetic traditions in there. So with that, I am going to close out this screen.
All right. So, whoop, put you back on.
Yeah, put me back up. Yeah. So, there's so much to excavate. And we were talking about before how, the written record and the contradiction between that and seeing the representations in petroglyphs or in statues or in codices, pictures that show us things. But there's also a difference in kinds of written record, because a lot of what, like in writing witches and pagans, I had to look through. The enemy was the source. The very men who wanted to suppress these traditions were also in the process of trying to stamp them out, recording them. So they would write penitential books and describe to other priests, this is what to watch out for, is the woman who does this, the woman who does that. And they were interrogating people in the confessional saying, do you know any woman who does this? Right? But in the
when
process
was the Malefarious Malacarium written?
Hold on, let me finish this thought.
Okay.
In the process of recording these practices, they actually inadvertently preserved evidence of them for us to pick up on. Now, the Malleus comes about many, many centuries later on, and they still have little shreds, but it's become so overwritten with the diabolist theology of the Inquisition. This devil worship charge that they were casting at witches. So it's not useful as the earlier works are. The church council records are useful. The penitential books are useful. There are other sources that we can get more out of. When you get into the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, you can still find things. And I have a whole chapter on the wise women from the period of the 16th century up on my Substack that really goes into details about what the witch trials reveal to us. There are Italian women in particular that we have from inquisitorial trials describing how they would gather flowers and herbs and cure them in olive oil. They had what they called ascension oils, and they were curing all kinds of diseases with these medications. And they're telling the inquisitors, no, I heal, I don't hurt anybody. And the inquisitors are pounding on them and saying, but when did you meet with the devil? And, when did you kill the babies? So under torture to get them, to force them to say things. So that's a resource. I'm going to just put this in here for Casey. She can put it in the show notes later.
Excellent.
Yeah, so there's many different kinds of sources, and some of them are very suspect. We have to learn to read through the bias, which is severe, whether you're talking about inquisitors in Europe or whether you're talking about missionaries in North and South America or in Africa.
And it also, it's my understanding that many of the actual writings in, say, Aramaic, for example, were mistranslated. I have a friend who sent me the Aramaic Our Father, which actually says, "Oh, great cosmic birther." It's how it starts out.
It's not true.
But
Neil Douglas Klotz is, the word is very definitely Our Father in Aramaic. I don't know where he got that from, but I've looked at that text. It's not.
It's not true. Okay.
Nope.
But there have been, to your point, but
there are variations. I agree with that. There are variations in early Christian tradition.
Right. And then there's the whole story of Lilith that never gets told, or she gets vilified. And so again, it's first of all, having this something outside of yourself that you have to go through in order to get to your divine source. I mean, I think that's that whole separation, is so key in terms of in when you have this power over kind of dominator model.
Yeah.
You can't have people, going directly to, nature or directly to, their source, their wise healer within, I call it, and getting all of the earth has, because herbal medicine is inexpensive or free. Everything is here in abundance for us. We don't really need, we don't have a deficiency of pharmaceutical medicine, is the truth.
Right.
So you have to
And
suppress.
we don't need an intermediary. I mean,
Right.
you have people who are wise and know about the herbs, but the priestly intermediary is an invention of patriarchy.
Yeah. And when they have that, whenever you create that separation, you create the mechanism for control, because you have to go
Yes.
through this gatekeeper, if you will,
Yes.
whatever it is. And so in my industry, it's, to get healthcare, you have to go through all these gatekeepers,
Right.
and, so on and so on. So, yeah, but I'm so happy that you exist and that you have been doing this for 56 years. I mean, I have such mad respect for you, Max. I really do.
Oh, thanks.
And there aren't many like you out there.
Thank you. It's interesting about the thing about the gatekeepers. I use that a lot because what I'm trying to do is get through the scholarly gatekeepers that edit out the information we want to get at. I'm also using scholarly sources a lot, but the stuff that's the most valuable tends to be the least known. It's really only in very specialized corners,
Right.
that it's not necessarily available to most people, or it's not in English. So this is why my books I consider to be source books, because it brings it all together, bringing together all these strands into a meaningful whole, and making it visible to people who are never going to read archaeological reports or canon law,
Right.
the church councils that are talking about people bringing offerings to the trees and the stones or the springs, and to make it accessible, because we have so many layers by now between us.
Right. Well, and
the original ancestral sources.
I was really struck by the sitting outside and the nature chairs, because women and nature have always been very closely associated, and I think that the way that we've been trained to treat nature is the same way we've been trained to treat women, as objects for use or consumption or whatever, as opposed to sacred beings. And the very interesting thing too, in the Native American cultures, which our Declaration of Independence is loosely based on, which says all men are created equal. And by the way, women were not considered people when the Constitution was written, so we're still not in there. But anyway, that's a separate point. But the Native Americans, actually, their Constitution said all are created equal. All men, women, animals, plants, the rivers, the rocks, the sky, the trees. So in that way, everything is your relation, right? Is your family.
Yes. Right.
And so you treat your family a whole lot different than you do a thing. And so I think that, getting back to the sacred, and what does sacred really mean to us today? I think we've lost our taste for the sacred, just like we've lost our taste for the bitter. We've lost our taste for water, our thirst for water. And it's just because we're out of practice more than anything. It's really more about remembering.
We've become denaturalized. It's there's this great phrase, I forget if it was Max Weber, I don't remember who came up with this, but it was like the disenchantment of the world. And it was like the Enlightenment. I mean, slavery was going on, all kinds of witch burnings, a lot of things, that were still happening at that time. It's a very problematic phrase, but there was a way in which at that time they pulled away from the dominance of church doctrine, but they substituted new doctrines that were really this disregard for the numinous, for the immanent presence, for what Robin Wall Kimmerer calls animacy,
Mm-hmm.
that indigenous societies all have,
Right.
including, the European societies before all of this was enacted on
Mm.
us. So it's the relationality you bring up, I think, is really crucial. And I think also, in my lifetime, a lot of women sought out nature because we could realize how disordered the society we were in, that we live in, is. How alienated, how instrumentalizing its relation to nature was. This extractivism that is killing the planet at this point. And we sought out nature as a point of inspiration. So without even knowing the word, we were doing utiseta.
Right.
And we continue to, because that's also, it's not only our inspiration and our knowing, it's also our healing.
Right.
Because women carry trauma. Everybody carries forms of trauma, because this is a sick society in a lot of ways. And it's like, we need healing. We need
Yes.
balance, and we need insight to recover
Yes.
from it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And my friend Kathy O'Brien has actually a book called PTSD: Time to Heal, and I strongly recommend that to everyone. Certainly, every woman that I know has experienced a lot of trauma, and essentially, because when you're traumatized, and this is how they do mind control. The formula for mind control is trauma, information control, so suppression of information they don't want out there, and then repetition. So this is a pattern. And so being healed from whatever trauma that you have going on is going to allow your brain to work a whole lot better when you are evaluating, any particular, statement or question or so on. So I think, we're all suffering from PTSD. Anybody who has been alive since 9/11, our most recent event, for people that were alive during the JFK assassination, that was a very traumatic event. I was in New York City on 9/11, so yeah, that was traumatic. And I think that's a topic that people don't want to talk about because it appears as weakness.
Well, that horror of weakness is very much the patriarchal disease. You have to be
Mhm.
strong in order to dominate. And I would say also, as far as like the healing of the mind is part of it, I think also that trauma recovery is a release process. It's
Right.
releasing energetic knots, and it's the flow of chi through the entire body. The body mind, really.
Right.
So we look at it that way, because disease results from those clenchings that happen in the body. The body locks up after trauma or after
That's right.
pain.
That's right. You
And I
dissociate.
would even say that our socialization, it's not trauma at that level, but it's like there's the conditioning. What does it do to make children sit for 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day in classrooms in rows
Right.
and have to sit still? And that it's just like there is a machining down in the socialization. It's going to become even more severe now that we have all the cyber capacities.
Yes.
And children are not playing outdoors anymore. They're playing video games or whatever.
Right. Right. And so for the listeners, the book that I was talking about, PTSD: Time to Heal, it's available at trance-formation.com. And this woman healed herself from literally robotic level mind control. So I encourage anybody with whatever, and she often comments that, trauma is a sliding scale. Mind control is a sliding scale, right? From what she experienced to what we have all experienced for all of our lives and all of our mothers and our grandmothers' lives, right? It's been something one thing that because I was in finance for 30 years before I got into herbal medicine. And one of the things that I was always fascinated about was, and I've been married twice, but I never changed my name. And I always thought it was so weird that women change their name. And so I went looking in terms of the marriage contract, and I was shocked to find out it's a chattel property contract. It's an ownership contract of the father or the husband of the wife, And the reason that the father gives the bride away at the wedding is because she's his property as a daughter before she becomes the property of her husband. And I was shocked and appalled at that. And people were like, "Oh no, that can't be right." And I'm like, "I think that's right." I don't know.
Yeah, there's a legal term that was brought over from England, and a term of French origin, couverture, which the oldest form of it is femme couverte de baron, which means woman covered by a lord. The husband is the lord, and the woman is the chattel.
Mm-hmm.
And so she does not legally exist in U.S. classic U.S. law. The husband, Blackstone, the husband was the lord, and
Right.
she was under him.
Yep. And yeah, so I mean, there's a million examples, and I just, if you don't mind, I just want to, about the goddess timeline?
And not only do I know about it, I was consulted for it.
Oh, good, because I
several
wanted
of my archaeological finds there for my research are in it.
Yeah. So just for the reader, this is it's by obviously Constance Tippett and consulted Max Dashu. Why would I not be surprised at that? But it's one of my favorite images, and I have it hanging in my office behind me. But what it really shows you is images that have been found, and I believe it starts at 40,000 BC. And goes up to sort of, modern times. But what you really see, to me anyway, is this, what really struck me is there's this giant expanse of history. And if you look at the time that patriarchy, that this whole power over dominator model has been in existence, it's a very tiny portion of our historical timeline. It's really very recent, in terms of history, right? So
Yeah.
I just did.
It's and that's part of the whole delusional mentality is that as if we're just like a split second of patriarchy in the whole development of humans.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the thing that really, like, besides the beautiful images and not skinny. Not little skinny things either, big voluptuous women were considered beautiful. The big thing that stuck out to me was, wow, how tiny the sliver of time this current system has existed. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, I did a poster on this called Female Icons. I'm going to see if I can screen share this because it's so amazing to see how global this was.
Mm.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to pull this up. Let's see if I can do the screen share so you can see it. Share screen. Okay, I have to navigate to it again. Talk. I'll find it.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, it's down below.
This is it.
Yeah, I see it popping up there. Okay, so let's add that. Okay.
Yeah. So, these are a whole range. What we have is Paleolithic to, they're still being made in a few places in the world, like Brazil and Cameroon, but, it's very, very global. And it's not just Southwest Asia, Egypt. And there's a few places you see more often, but it's also Louisiana and Costa Rica and Illinois and Zimbabwe. It's just much, much more global than we have been given to understand. And so you can get that at Valletta Press, and you can Google Valletta Press to track that down, or just Google female icons and see this poster. I just had it reprinted because I've sold now over 1,000 of them. And so I sold out. I have to print it up again.
So it's valletta.net, is that correct? Yeah. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yeah, so any of Max's books, DVDs, posters, and she also has a lot of other I can't wait to check out your Substack, Old Witch. I just signed up for that.
Yeah, the Substack. And the other thing relating to that, because I see you're interested in the early Christian period, is I have a chapter on the Gnostic goddess that I serialized because it's too long for one Substack post. So there's 4 posts, and the last one's on Mariam of Magdala, which a lot of women I know are interested in. So yeah, please check that out because I just started the Substack recently. It's got about 50 posts on it now.
Oh, that's great. Well, you've got only got 75,000 to go to catch up with your images. Just playing with you. I'm just teasing. But, really a picture does tell 1,000 words, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Leonard Shlain talks about that in, I had a little video where he talks about, okay, so like take your watch. Like I'm not wearing one right now, but you can look at my watch and your right brain is going to take a picture of the watch, right? Or I could go in another room and I could write a one-page description of my watch and then give it to you. But without seeing the watch, you still wouldn't have the full picture of what the watch was, right? So it's just that way that we use both sides of our brain. And unfortunately, that right hemisphere has kind of atrophied because we haven't used it. And so
this is very true, because I think there are cultures where it's not even that it's developed. I mean, it may also be developed, but it's just like, this is what I was saying about the classrooms sitting in rows, is that those capacities that we have, our brain has these faculties that we're not even allowed to use. It atrophies because you don't have the freedom. You're being machined down into rows. So it's really forcing you to stick over into that left side of the brain. And so the dreaming self that could actually, I mean, there are precognitive experiences that people have even in our society. But like I've read about people in Aboriginal society in Australia who know when somebody dies, maybe 30 miles away, they dream it, they know it, and then the word comes, and in fact, it's true. And I've had my friend dreamed that her grandmother came to her bed the night she died. She came to her. And, she could not have known that, but except through dreaming.
Yes. And I think that we are all so much more connected than the powers that be have really allowed us to understand. And so I appreciate the people out like yourself that are out there speaking the truth and getting that suppressed, I would say, occult, hidden information out there. And to understand that, a lot of what's been written about goddesses and witches and women in history as, sort of the whore of Babylon and the sacrificing the children and all of that business is just not true. That is not a true goddess centered sacred society. And those things were overlaid over a lot of the dates and rituals of the earlier society. So
Definitely.
that's one thing.
Demonization.
Demonization. Yeah, absolutely.
And the other part of that is like, modern media, like the witches of Eastwick, you have women who are basically slaves to this devil, and it's like, that's the old model of the witch hunts, but it's nothing to do. I mean, that it's like, to watch that, it's like, it's not empowering. It continues to keep women under the lid.
Completely agree. Those stereotypes are not helpful. And I found the one little pamphlet written, oh gosh, a long time ago by Barbara Ehrenreich, and I'm trying to remember the other author. Deirdre English, thank you. Witches, midwives, and nurses. Really, from a healer standpoint, really tells the tale of how women essentially got drummed out of the healing arts and got replaced with this, I call it the Rockefeller business model of medicine, which is just designed to drain your bank accounts and keep you chronically sick. It seems to me, but that's just from where I sit.
No, I think you're right, because not only, I mean, even before Rockefeller, you have Marion Sims, who did awful stuff, and he invented the speculum, and also the father of gynecology, by unanesthetized operations on enslaved women.
Yes.
One woman he operated on her 30 times. That is a lot of torture that she had to undergo. So the heroes of medicine are problematic, but even in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, they had heroic medicine, and this involved violent purgatives and emetics, making people throw up or out the other end. And also the medicines they were giving, and I'll put that in quotes, involved heavy metals like mercury and lead and arsenic, and it's like poisons. They're giving people poisons to.
I know. And, I teach about that. I teach, about the three traditions of healing, the heroic tradition being one of them. And people are often really kind of surprised to hear about that's really kind of equates to what a lot of people call holistic healing today. It's a lot
Holistic.
of very, powerful, scary, poisonous herbs. They're not interested in the nourishing herbs at all. They're really more about fixing you, and again, having you look outside yourself to the male. It's usually a male, and his rules in order to be healthy. And so, it's, I don't know, it's different than the scientific tradition, which is more linear, but it pales
Right.
in comparison
Right.
to the
This
wise.
is a whole other level.
Yeah.
So
But
we have, on one hand, we have holistic medicine, and the other hand, we have ballistic medicine. No, I've not heard that term. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then the wise woman tradition is this older one, and it's the least visible and the least known, which is, it's not a line like scientific, and it's not a circle like heroic. It's a spiral, because there's no beginning, there's no ending, and it's holographic in nature, and everything is connected. And that is so not compatible with linear left brain thinking. It defies it. So, for example, describe the color yellow. Go ahead. You can't, because there are certain things, like describe art. You can't.
Yeah, well, describe the color yellow. What you end up saying, it's like the color of dandelions. You have to compare it to a living thing.
Right, exactly.
Right, or to a mineral. It's like yellow cake or uranium or something. It just,
Right.
you have to have a physical comparator.
Right. And so, one of the things, I was a philosophy major. One of my majors was philosophy. The other one was economics, because I needed to get a job at some point. But one thing that I always wondered was, is the yellow that I'm seeing the same yellow that you're seeing?
How could we know?
I don't know.
I mean, they figured out that certain males have color blindness.
One of my ex-husbands was colorblind. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and then it's like also other species, how do they perceive things? Flies with their 1,000 eyes, or the 1,000 eyeballs, however you say it, or animals, and how do they see color? It just...
Oh, it's so fun. Well,
for another incarnation, perhaps.
Another incarnation. Wow, what a fun time it's been chatting with you here, Max. We're just about out of time here, but what would you like to leave our audience with in terms of wise women of history?
It's so broad and so vast. One of the things that I've worked on a lot is to show a more global perspective, because, of course, we have the recovery of wise women traditions in Europe, but there is also the African, there's the Southeast Asian, there is the Central American, there are all these ways. And so I invite people to look also on Valletta Press. You can find my DVD, Woman Shaman, the Ancients, which is another source that I've compiled, a visual source, but with music, of archaeology depicting medicine women, healers, diviners, female prophets, in just about every kind of media you could dream up: bronzes, ceramics, rock art. And so like it's this process of regathering, recollecting what is in the world cultural record, to get a real, because we get then a broader, deeper view. And what's interesting when you do that, when I made this video, is that you begin to see recurring patterns. So it's not just the witch's wand in Europe, it's the ceremonial staff of the Makiwana in Malawi, Africa. That you begin to see ritual ties appearing on the arms and legs as part of ceremonial regalia. And that's fascinating. Or just symbols like the spiral, the quadrant, or sometimes they double the quadrant. So like, the witch's calendar of the holy days. You have the solstices and equinox, but then you have the cross quarters.
Yes.
So then it's the 8 rather than the 4.
Right.
And there are so many things that we realize that, the basic truth of those cosmological systems or of those worldviews is that you see recurrence because these things have something fundamental to them. in the understanding of water, the understanding of fire, or the symbols that might be employed. The fact that the spiral appears on painted pottery all over the world.
Right. And those people did not have contact with each other at that
Yeah,
time.
most of them didn't,
Right.
and that's been a whole argument in archaeology. I mean, some we can really trace spheres of influence that do fan out, but there is no question. The most dramatic example I found was there was a ceremonial, it was what they call a female effigy vessel from Hungary in the 5th millennium BCE of a duck woman with breasts. And I found the same symbol in Chile in the 1500s. The distance of time and space is too vast for there to have ever been any kind of diffusion of that concept that spread. It arose independently in
Yes.
these places, and there are many, many examples of that. It's something about the human perception of the world and the way we relate to it and the way we symbolize it.
And I think your
Yeah,
term
of course.
earlier was reconnecting. And I say that we're really remembering, because all of this is actually inside of our DNA. It's in there. And often I find that when we start to open up the other side, what we go is, oh yeah, okay, yes, it's like almost like you recognize things.
Recognition, absolutely. There
And
is that recognition.
yes,
And this is what I found when I first started doing slideshows in 1973. I was teaching with images, and women, this is the power of it. They were moved by the images. They could see the potency. You didn't have to tell them, look, this is a potent woman, in her ecstatic dance, whatever it was they were looking at. They could feel it in their gut.
right.
It was actually a body-mind experience to witness those images. That's the
Yes.
power of it.
Yes. And I also think that there's that power of the intuition is very, very powerful. And in fact, the reason I wanted to point out that these symbols appeared independently all over the world without contact that we can prove is that the same thing happens with the herbs and the plants. So, if you ask a medicine man or woman in South America about ayahuasca, she'll say, well, which kind do you want? And then they'll take you to the plant. And if you go to the other part of the world in Africa and you ask them, show me ayahuasca, they'll say, well, which one? And then they'll take you to the exact same plant. Now, those people have never talked to each other. They've never looked at a book. So, how did they know? And I say that the plants told them.
Well, that's what they say.
Yes,
I
that's
mean,
what
there are many instances of medicine people who say, the plants showed me.
Yes.
And there's similar usage also, because the Artemisia family is a good example, because we had mugwort in Europe, you have desert sage in North America, and you have moxa, or as they call it, ai in Chinese, and they were all used in clearing away negative energies and restoring balance.
Yes, and she prefers cronewort though. She objects to mugwort because that's associated with her beer making abilities. So Artemisia vulgaris really prefers the term cronewort. That's what we call her because she has silver hair. I'm just saying the cronewort. That's what we call her.
The mug is actually it's an Anglo-Saxon derived word. I forget the etymology of it, but it was sacral. The meaning is sacral.
Interesting. I did not know that because my understanding was she was used to ferment beer, and that's why she got the nickname.
It was used in beer, but that I don't think that's the etymology of.
Oh.
And the old name for it was wermoth, which means aware mind.
Aware mind. Wow. Well, she is very well known for dreaming, inducing.
That's the Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
Put her. Yeah. Right. The whole dream pillow thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Max. I want everybody to check out Veleda.net and check out Max's books. And let me just see if I can find it here again. I've lost it.
The female icons poster.
The female icons poster. Yes, there's
actually 4 posters. You can look at all of them on Veleda.net.
Okay, Veleda.net is the place that you want to go. So thank you so much, Max, and we'll definitely have to have you back on, and because it's really, I was so impressed. I mean, I was like, I think it was like yesterday. I was like, "Hey, let's talk about wise women in history." And look what happens. You whip up this beautiful presentation in no time. So that's very impressive. You really.
Oh, well, I already
really,
had the presentation.
yeah, you're really, but you still, I'm impressed. And like I said, mad respect for you. So Valeda.net, and it's the Suppressed Histories Archives. And the best place to go for that is for the bulk of your work is, what would you say? Is it?
Well, the suppressedhistories.net is the website.
Okay, Suppressed
However,
Histories.
we're reconfiguring that because what's on there is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to have about 14,000 posts on there. When we finish, we have to create navigation pages so that all of what's in there in the database can be daylighted.
Okay.
But the other place I would suggest is to look and follow the Suppressed Histories page on Facebook.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We're getting close to 300,000 followers on there.
Fabulous.
And I post there pretty much daily, so there is a lot to explore. What I tell people is to go through the photo section, and you can explore it that way. You can find the subjects much more quickly that you're interested in.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Max.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back, and you can talk about anything you want, not just what I want to talk about. Thanks so much, darling. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.